Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1.
Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Congratulations. On behalf of the Popcorn Talk Network, the online broadcast network for movie talk, and the Schmoes know, you are now a member of the Jedi Alliance. May the Force be with you, always.
Hello there, and welcome to Jedi Alliance, a celebration of the greatest saga ever told, and soon there will be even more saga to celebrate, which is part of what we're talking about today. Our main topic will be how much the prequels and the general prequel era will influence Episode 8. How much will it? How much should it? We will discuss that. We'll go have fan questions and Duel of the Fates like always. I am one of your hosts. My name is Joseph Scrimshaw. Your other host is, of course...
Right here, the internet's Mark Donica. Today the B stands for Blu-ray, because we're going to be talking about that once we get to News from the HoloNet. Not yet, but... I've been pushing this show to you for a while, this topic,
yes.
and I'm pretty excited to talk about it.
I am very excited to talk about it. Every once in a while, Mark and I like to have our intimate host-only episodes where we can spend some quality time together and really get to stare into one another's eyes. Oh, it's so beautiful, so beautiful. It can be a touchy subject, the old prequels. Right, right. So we want to dive into it sensitively. Welcome to our sensitive, intimate episode of Jedi Alliance.
I need to get some more of that sexy music.
I wanted to start off just by chatting a little bit about the Oscars, because we had a little bit of Star Wars action in the Oscars, but really not that much.
I mean, the most Star Warsy thing was seeing the three droids all on stage.
Yeah.
But it's weird how, like, it's not new canon because C-3PO didn't have his red arm. I was just like, what? How, this doesn't make sense. They're time traveling. Or they repaired it, like, then the purpose of him having a red arm is totally moot. In Episode 8, he's going to have his gold arm again. Or not. Who knows?
Yeah.
The implications are endless.
That's fascinating, because I did not expect the Oscars ceremony where C-3PO compares himself to the statue in a complimentary way, in an attracted to himself kind of way almost was the joke. I didn't expect it to be canon. But that's bad branding.
Yeah. If I mean, especially Marvel's coming out with the comic that explains how he got the red arm.
Right.
Like really soon, actually. I think like within the next month. Why would you put it on TV and just like, red arm, forget about it?
It's clearly a setup for the comic book in which we learn how he got his gold arm for the Oscars.
He steps off of the Oscars stage and we find out that somebody, like Biden knocked it off or something. Who knows?
Biden?
Yeah, Biden.
Joe Biden?
Yeah, Joe Biden.
Yeah,
he was there.
I know.
Not?
It was a nice choice.
He bought Girl Scout cookies.
A nice ball. And assaulted C-3PO. It was really cool to see that because that's the kind of thing that I have talked about in the past that used to be the only way you'd ever see Star Wars on television back in the early days, when it would just be some weird thing, super non-canon, like
random
Mark Hamill being on the Muppets. And it's always
or even
C-3PO.
on The Simpsons.
Yeah. So that was really fun to see that very kind of old time, very cheesy, and not in a bad way, but very cheesy Star Wars thing. The other thing that I thought was interesting about it was R2 kind of got the shaft. R2 barely got any of his squeaking lines in. It's all BB-8.
And we talked about it a little while ago, but the Poe Dameron to the Rescue Lego short came out, and there's a fun line when they're kind of flying through the craziness. Both C-3PO and BB-8 are freaking out.
Yeah.
And 3PO says something akin to like, "Well, it's good to have a companion that is equally as concerned about their safety as I am." And it's like, what's going on with the space droid romance here? What's going on between R2 and C-3PO?
I liked that line because it was very true. BB-8 seems very aware of problems. He's not freaking out too bad, but he's aware of them. And R2-D2 is never... It's always like, I got this. There's no problem. I can take care of it.
It's like, shut up and let me get this fixed.
I've got an appendage for this. It'll work out. That's R2's attitude toward everything. Were you bummed that Star Wars didn't win much?
A little bit. There were a couple of categories where I was like, yeah, Mad Max. Mad Max was an amazing film. Still is an amazing film. And it's not like it lost to something lesser. You know, they're pretty good on a different areas of fiction and science fiction, and some of the 3D effects or some of the graphics in Mad Max were just like, I thought it was all real. Like, suspension of disbelief was super high. Whereas Star Wars, I was like, this is Star Wars! and yeah. But score, I mean, I didn't see Hateful Eight, but a lot of people really like that score, but I was hoping that John Williams could have pulled that one out.
Yeah, the score was amazing in Hateful Eight, I thought, but I felt like they were two kind of legacy awards And I wish, maybe it's because I talk about Star Wars every week and have been doing so for months and months and months, that I was really hoping for John Williams. And it seemed like the droids coming out to give him a shout out was a little bit more of his, like, hey, we didn't give you an award, but these 3 droids will talk to you, which, I think he deserved the actual award.
Unless we're gonna get a special, like a special segment on any of the Blu-rays of the droids visiting John Williams in like the writing room and like annoying him like the Animaniacs when Lincoln was trying to write his speech. I don't know, like it was a weird placement, but it was fun.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah, I would be thrilled if that was a deleted scene in the Blu-rays that we're about to talk about. If there was just the droids going around harassing all sorts of different people, I would be always happy with that as a deleted scene. More 3PO just annoying
like
creative
Hollywood
people.
Boulevard style. Okay, in the creative room. Yeah,
in the creative room when they're really trying to work.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Well, should we move into news then?
Why not? Let's
Excellent.
go to news from the HoloNet. One of the big... Go ahead. There it is.
There we go.
One of the biggest... This is still technically a rumor, but it's everything... There's a lot of things
Rumors from the HoloNet.
Rumors from the HoloNet. But there's a lot of things contributing to this as a possibility, is that March 15th will be the day that we see the digital release of The Force Awakens to the interwebs, to the HoloNet, Amazon, iTunes. So it's going to be sort of leading the physical purchase, which has always been sort of a big tradition, is buying the new version of Star Wars,
right?
Which again we'll talk about when we talk about the Blu-ray. But do you think the digital versions will take away from the sales of the physical versions?
I don't think so. We've been talking a lot on this show about the various creative ways that Disney's experience with Marvel can affect Star Wars. And when I was reading this rumor about the digital release, it was talking about how all of the Marvel movies, they've got their schedule down where they release the digital about 3 weeks out of the physical. Mm-hmm. So I think they must have some numbers on the back end that show that this is the right way to do this. And I feel like with The Force Awakens in particular, they get a huge amount of money from the casual fan, and then they get this huge other chunk of money from the hardcore people. So I feel like, for people who are just like, oh yeah, I really like that space movie, I want to watch it again and fast forward through the part where Han dies because that made me sad, I'll buy the digital. That's fine.
I think this will be for the impulse buyers, the huge fans who are like, well, I'm buying it for physical anyway, even though I believe it comes with a digital version anyway. And it's for the people who really want to nitpick and start going through frame by frame.
I mean, honestly, the day after the movie came out, I would have paid thousands of dollars just for Rey's vision, so I could go through that frame by frame. So I think certainly with people who want to analyze it a lot, there will be a lot of sales, but I think those people will still do the physical as well. So I don't think it will make much of an impact on the physical.
Yeah, I hope not. The only thing that comes out of the early digital releases is the possibility of piracy,
right.
And that's never really been a huge thing with Star Wars because there's so many other ways that they make up their make their money back within 5 minutes of release. But speaking of that, the Blu-ray has had their features released. The picture that we're showing is actually of the Walmart exclusive BB-8 packaging, which would send me into
and this is
store.
still rumored too, right? This is not confirmed?
No, I'm pretty sure this was confirmed. Yeah. No, because Walmart had this listing up on their store, and we have this. This is a confirmed packaging.
Did they
for
take
the
it
Blu-ray.
down though, or is it still up?
As far as I know, it's still up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had read that they took it down, so we'll see.
Okay,
Mystery abounds.
While it was up, the special features were detailed as the following: Secrets of the Force Awakens, a cinematic journey; The Story Awakens, the table read; Building BB-8; Crafting Creatures; Blueprint of a Battle, the Snow Fight; The Visual Magic of the Force, John Williams, the Seventh Symphony, which sounds like its own franchise, I would totally see; Deleted Scenes; and Force for Change. That's a lot of really good features that would make me hold off on the physical release, or hold off for the physical release instead of just getting the digital one.
Yeah, I think that there is going to be a little bit of a swing back to physical. It's not like I am a crazy person with the conspiracy theory saying physical media is going to come entirely back and now we're going to do any of this digital. But I'm increasingly seeing people complain on social media about it can be hard to manage all of the cloud stuff. You can get it cut off from you at weird points. So I feel like for hardcore fans with something like Star Wars, that I wouldn't be surprised to see The Force Awakens be like a huge physical media purchase.
And they know it. Disney knows it. They know it they've got their the Phase 1 Marvel collection, which comes with the Tesseract and in the Shield briefcase. Then the Phase 2 one comes with the Power Gem from Guardians of the Galaxy. So they know, and we're seeing more of those special editions released for those
things that are for a collectible mindset.
Yes, not just, oh, hey, here's the movie. So, I mean, we're both of us at this table, we're going to get the physical release when it comes out. Was that something that you were like, oh, the features better be good? Or was it just like, no, it's Star Wars, I'm going to buy it?
I probably would have bought it out of tradition no matter what, because I still remember buying almost every physical edition of Star Wars that came out. When I was thinking back on it, I've made 1,000 jokes about, I'll buy this again when it comes out, and even though it's not that different. But I've never been bummed that I've bought a physical disc. There always has been something different about it.
Especially a Star Wars one?
Or the VHS. I remember when I bought the VHS of Phantom Menace. We'll talk about the prequels plenty, but with my friend group, we're all pretty negative on Phantom Menace, and I acknowledged a lot of the problems, was bummed out. And I was still thrilled to buy the VHS like 6 months later. And I still had a party with all of my friends who had been complaining for 6 months. I was like,
tape release party?
Yeah, do you want to come over for my tape release party? And they're like, yeah, I hated that movie. I'm like, okay, but I'm going to come anyway. And that it was still special.
Yeah.
Even though there was like lots of anger and frustration.
At least you can commiserate with friends for something like that.
Yeah, so there's this great history of, for me, of like celebrating the physical releases in some way. So I would buy this even if it was a pretty straightforward disc, but I'm thrilled about these special features because I feel like it's sad with the decrease of physical media that we're losing these kinds of insight into the filmmaking process. Like, so many people got educated just about how films were made because of the format of DVDs. So I'm happy to see those features being out there. And then I'm just really hungry for some of these specific features.
I mean, the different documentaries, the deleted scenes. But Lucasfilm has always had a history of, here's the trilogy, and here's a special disc that's just bonus material. Like when the Indiana Jones trilogy first came out, I watched that fourth disc of all bonus material and filmmaking and all that stuff all the time. And I think it would be better. And the what was it, From Star Wars to Jedi, the VHS special? I watched that maybe 3 months ago, like leading up to Force Awakens. Well, longer now, but like I think like late November. My fiance and I watched it, and it was just like, this is amazing. You don't get this as often, or you don't think you get this as often, and I think it would benefit them to have, similar to what they've done before, a separate release of, here's a documentary that is just the making of the movie.
Yeah.
I think it would be super beneficial, and ultra collectors would buy it.
Yeah, and I think also toward the end of this sort of reign of DVDs, special features started to turn into kind of puff pieces where you didn't get anything meaty in the background. It was, and I'll be really interested to see. These sound like some of them could be meaty, and some of them could be like, table read, that sounds great. Is it like a really well-made sort of documentary where you get to see some of the personal interactions, where you get to see some of the lines that changed?
Or is it just like, we've got the whole cast here.
Star Wars is an amazing thing. These are some actors looking at paper. Star Wars! Yeah, it could be just a crappy puff piece, or it could be this amazing, in-depth, nuanced thing.
I think in the world that we live in of podcasts, hi everybody at home, I think just having a table read, having that file of a 2.5 hour file of them sitting at a table reading the script for whichever, like either the first draft or whatever. One, to see what's changed. Two, to get that like interaction off screen to see what the filmmaking process was like. I think that would be invaluable if they gave you a code for a downloadable copy of it, or like an audio copy of it, or something where they make that as a separate feature.
Yeah,
I would be so into that.
Yeah, and Gary is probably there because
most likely
Carrie Fisher had her with Gary with all the time. So
Carrie's Gary Fisher.
Carrie's Gary Fisher.
A follow-up question to all of this, which is a seemingly obvious answer: will you buy the saga as a whole again later?
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it goes without saying at this point for any real Star Wars fan, quote unquote real Star Wars fan, hardcore Star Wars fan. I've got the original tape trilogy twice, and then the special edition trilogy, and then the DVDs, and et cetera, et cetera.
I think the other fascinating thing with the special features on physical media is they're always juicier the more time has passed, because the people involved are far more open about this thing that happened along. If there's conflict during the making of the movie, people are open about it. and they're much more willing to share when many years have passed. So I feel like by the time the whole saga comes out, we might get some little tidbits about any problems or conflicts or funny stories in The Force Awakens, where like right now they're like, this is still marketing, whereas 7 years from now, it's sort of reporting on history.
Yeah.
And I think that's always a fascinating thing.
A random side question. Are you a little bit sad that there isn't a blooper reel? Or do you think that'll come out when we get the saga collection? Or do you think that's something that we're going to hold off on just to kind of maintain seriousness?
I hope that there is a blooper reel. The Phantom Menace DVD, that was an Easter egg that you had to look for. It wasn't the whole blooper reel, but it was just Frank Oz as Yoda forgetting his line, and it was shot so you couldn't see anything but Frank Oz operating the Phantom Menace Yoda puppet, and so it's basically, you had to click around to like some symbol and then put in the code, and Frank Oz's Yoda basically says, "Always do there, George." Line is great. It's great. And I would love some hidden Easter eggs.
That'd be fun.
Of characters.
So something like Kylo Ren taking off his helmet for the first time and his hair getting caught.
Yes.
So something that just totally kills all drama.
Kills everything about it. Yeah, I would love that.
Our last story today, Star Wars is going to start to be shown on British Airways long-haul flights starting March 1st, starting tomorrow. So if you're going to be on a British Airways long-haul flight or not, buy a ticket. Would you take... So there are a lot of hardcore Star Wars fans that said, well, I saw it this way. Would you buy a long-haul ticket just to be one of the people that says, I saw it on the airplane?
Now, if I had a chunk of money that was for foolish Star Wars purchases set aside, I would definitely consider this as one of the possible foolish Star Wars purchases. I'd like to go anywhere that British Airways is flying anyway, but... I was looking at this article, and I think the most interesting thing to me about it is it says that it is in 3D sound, so it makes you feel like you are in the middle of it. And I would actually like to be flying on a plane in the middle of a movie that features a lot of spaceships blowing up and crashing.
That TIE Fighter escape scene must just be intense.
Yes. So I would love to have that experience. I feel like it would be a test of nerves.
I mean, regardless, seeing Star Wars in any enhanced, quote unquote enhanced thing, like this is the real 4D experience, or the 4D 4X experience,
Yeah.
So seeing it like that would just be fun.
Now they did have here in LA the actual 4D, the thing where like the chair shakes and the wind blows and they throw some water on you, and I wanted to go to that. I was really bummed that I didn't, because I wanted to see how well it worked, if it was timed well, or if it's like they throw water on you at the wrong times.
It's literally just a guy with a bucket, like vaudeville.
I think the seats missed your head, and I would like to get my head misted while watching The Force Awakens, but I think that time has passed. So I guess that's going to be for Episode 8.
Yeah,
hopefully. My head misted.
I mean, hopefully they do like an AMC thing where you can watch all of the movies like up to then, and it's all in 4D or 4DX or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were the biggest headlines from the Holonet this week.
Excellent. So we're going to move on to our main topic, which is discussing how much the prequel era should be represented in Episode 8. So I wanted to start, Mark, by just talking about our current take on the prequels and the general prequel era.
Sure.
So you've been on this adventure of you were a big Star Wars fan. You started doing this show. We did all the watch-alongs, and I think you probably got even more immersed than you had been in the process of doing these shows. We did the critical watch-alongs together. After all of these experiences that you've had since we took over the show, where are you at with the prequels now?
Appreciation. It as you mentioned, in terms of like a DVD like historical thing, looking back and being able to look at it at a better way. Growing up, it was confusion, I suppose, was the best way. It was just like, I don't know what's going on, sort of a thing. And then getting the red letter media reviews made me go, oh, well, of course these are terrible, and now there's a reason. But those actually helped me sort of enlighten a little bit more from a different perspective. And then going back now and watching the Clone Wars show and getting more expansive views of these characters has been a big help. And it's not, they definitely don't rank higher than the original trilogy or Episode 7 for favorite movies, but there's a lot of good stuff in there, and there, I mean, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I appreciate a lot of the stuff that was brought up in that era and presented in that area, because that is the history of this galaxy. Like, whether we like it or not, that's history, and that's whether in real life or in Star Wars, whether we like it or not, that's history. And one of the best things that we can do now moving forward is acknowledge that history, utilize that history to expand upon what we can do in the future.
Yeah. And for people who haven't maybe heard me go on about the prequels, which was actually my very first appearance on Jedi Alliance as a guest, is
defending the prequels.
Defending the prequels.
It's a good episode.
Yeah.
Go back and watch it.
Well, thank you. I feel like I agree with a lot of the criticisms of the prequels, but I feel like there's a lot that is very good in there that is not appreciated because we focus on the things that aren't good. So there's a lot of stuff that I think is just objectively great. There's a lot of stuff that I can see past the execution to what the idea is, and I love just sitting around and thinking about Star Wars. It's one of my biggest relationships to Star Wars is when I have to do something that's not fun, like drive. My mind wanders to Star Wars, and I think about things.
Hey, Star Wars, what are you doing? Oh, nothing,
Star
Joseph.
Wars.
Just space stuff.
Exactly.
It's being able to appreciate it regardless of what you're like. No matter what I think about the franchise and about the prequel era, that's not as important as accepting it for what it is.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of good stuff in there, and I also think that there are a lot of good ideas that don't get really appreciated, and in particular, I think the difference between the prequel movies in the prequel era.
Yeah.
So a lot of things got fleshed out in the Clone Wars. So there's a lot from the Clone Wars that we really like. But even ideas that are just contained to the movies, it's really interesting to see how, as fans go along and they don't like the prequels, we've still adopted and internalized a lot of the ideas from them because we like the ideas. You know, the Sith, it had never really been clarified that there were trading cards that said Lord Vader, Darth Vader, Lord of the Sith. When I was a kid, and we're like, what's the Sith? Like that whole idea.
Well, he's a Dark Lord of them.
The idea of, the Jedi, had this structured organization, and they had Padawans. They weren't sort of nomads, and some of these things were changes, but a lot of those ideas, the idea of a Jedi Council, the real sort of political reality of how Palpatine turned the government into something evil from the inside, all of these ideas that you can really sort of appreciate and play with, even if you're not a huge fan of the actual execution of the movies. So kind of what we want to talk about during the show is some of the just literal actual things from the movies, but also just ideas from the prequel era in general. And I wanted to start by just reviewing a little bit of what is in Force Awakens, because there is a little bit of stuff. The most obvious is the mentioning of the Clone Army.
Yeah, that was the one up front. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it was really smart because I think all of us would have been like, well, if they're fighting over how to train an army from birth, what about the clones? So it was great that they just threw that in there. My favorite connection is I just feel like Adam Driver's delivery as Kylo Ren a couple times is just note perfect, angry, whiny, petulant Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a good way of just somebody who is angry in a petulant, childish way. The way he delivers Traitor, it sounds exactly like Hayden yelling liar.
And that line hit you, both of those lines hit you so just in the core emotionally to go, okay, I understand.
Yes, that person is irrationally angry and can choke me from far away.
Yes.
That's what both of
Arms
those,
or not.
That's what both of those lines say. Another kind of subtle thing is very early on in the movie, Lor Santeca, when he's giving the information to Poe Dameron, mentions bringing balance to the Force, which is an idea totally introduced in the prequels.
Yep.
The idea of that prophecy. We have learned from the visual dictionary that Captain Phasma's shiny armor is actually taken from Palpatine's Naboo ship, which is awesome. And then there are a couple of other little things here and there. Maz Kanata has some pod racing flags, so that's definitely a little thing in the background. Some articles that collect the prequel references argue that hearing Obi-Wan's voice, young Obi-Wan's voice, is a connection to the prequels, arguing that the idea that the new stormtroopers are taken from birth is kind of a connection to the Jedi.
Yep.
Which is something I think that you brought up in our very first review of Force Awakens. So
when we were talking about that, and there's my insane headcanon about midichlorians, which I'm sure we can talk about at some point if anybody missed that.
Remind me.
Sure. So something that's just sort of around and present in real life when it comes to indoctrinating children and creating soldiers at a young age is the right type of vitamins to suppress or enhance certain abilities.
Right.
So if this is an order under the Emperor, who comes from a time where midichlorians are totally a thing, which they are, and you have to accept that even if they stop talking about it.
Unless you just believe that Qui-Gon was lying.
Oh, unless you, and it's my way to either disprove or make people go, oh, midichlorians, we don't care about those anymore.
Okay.
The Emperor institutes for all stormtroopers a suppressant, a midichlorian suppressant that they've been trying to work on for years and years and years. And so when Finn starts sort of, showing...
Forcing?
Not necessarily forcing, but becoming more aware and possibly force sensitive, as we've all determined, then that shows that doping, essentially that suppression, doesn't work, and that the entire concept of midichlorians is out the window because it's from an old science, because we reject old scientific theories all the time, just as a society. So that's an old world thing that we thought, but midichlorians are, or not, it's possible to have an immense force power with a high midichlorian count notwithstanding.
So
that it's a way to go, okay, they totally thought midichlorians were a thing, but now it doesn't matter because Finn broke through their suppressant, and so midichlorians don't matter anymore.
So in your mind, when you're watching The Phantom Menace and Qui-Gon bends down to Anakin to tell him about the Force, it's basically like he's saying, and every planet in the galaxy is flat.
Well, essentially, like that.
Yeah, I like it.
That was,
I'm not teasing.
Sure, okay. But and I didn't think you were. But I mean, it's if we're gonna reflect on this war, sort of how we do in the real world, where war kind of never ends, it just changes. We have to treat it like a real society.
Yeah, interesting. It's a very interesting idea. Speaking of real societies, my first question for you is: do you want to see more politics in Episode 8 or going forward in the rest of the sequels?
That was funny because since our review and moving forward, a lot of our guests, when we talk to them about The Force Awakens, go, man, I wish there was more politics in it, which is the biggest complaint, is like, we need to hit that sweet spot that that the prequels didn't quite hit in some places. So yeah, I even if it's like action movie-esque politics where it's just like a couple of lines back and forth, but it totally establishes everythin.
Yeah,
sure.
But even you're at this point, you are a hardcore Star Wars fan. You're spending a lot of time discussing and thinking about it. You have an amazing headcanon about midichlorians.
Do what I can.
So even if in Episode 8 it slowed things down a little bit for you as a fan of action adventure movies, would you still be super engaged because you're so in depth on Star Wars that you're happy to get this information?
I'll say yes, because if my theory is correct and we are going to see a Star Wars that we've never seen before, then the easiest thing is to have two politicians talking to each other about this war. It's essentially going to be a Cold War. Everybody's like, well, you don't have the guts to do that. Oh yeah, well, you're right, we don't. But secretly, there's this infiltration happening in the countries, and there's all of this fighting going on. But on a political level, nobody's the wiser.
Yeah.
So I think if you handle it in the right context, sure.
Yeah. I would be thrilled to see some more political scenes, because I feel like that was the one part of Force Awakens that it left people a little bit confused. I think it was the safe choice, probably the right choice, to not have all of those clarifying political scenes to set up the destruction of Hosnian Prime. But I think it was missing. I think it would be great to sort of set the stakes for the galaxy, because I want it to be really, really clear from the film itself, not just from like books and additional reading, which I'll read anyway, of what the stakes are in the galaxy. Because I know the sagas are always going to be tales of the Skywalkers, but I want to, in this new sequels, I really want to see how the Skywalkers' actions directly affect the galaxy.
Yeah.
And I think that we can only do that if we really clearly know what the stakes are in the galaxy. I also think that...
like they become the galaxy's version of the Kennedys? Like...
Yeah. And in, I think, the previous two prequels, the Skywalkers do obviously affect the fate of the entire galaxy, but in this kind of somewhat quiet, a little bit behind-the-scenes way. And I would like that to be really, really clearly set up of... the Skywalker, if it's just Kylo Ren or if it's Rey or whoever else might end up being a Skywalker, the Skywalkers, I want to see whatever happens in the galaxy be truly affected by their actions, really, really directly. And I think knowing the stakes, makes that huge. I also feel like it would be great to get some scenes for Leia to just have some straight up great political scenes, like House of Cards intrigue level intense scenes, I think could be really, really cool with Leia.
If she has the right person to counter her, that's like same level. Maybe that's the Laura Dern character. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But if she has somebody that can equal her intent and intensity, I think it would be thrilling without a blaster being fired.
Yeah.
You know, like that's another type of action that we haven't seen for a while anyway. Like Tarkin's barbed tongue back in the original one was just like anything he says is there's something's going to go off when he's around.
Yeah.
So yeah, we haven't had that for a little while, and I think it would be cool to have that similar intensity on the Resistance side.
Yeah. Cool. Do you think that they should address the sort of failed and successful philosophies of the Jedi and the Sith that were presented in the prequels? So in the prequels, we sort of learned that the Jedi failed, basically, because of their traditions, and then we also saw that the Sith were successful because of their traditions of the secrecy and the rule of two. So do you want to see any sort of commentary back on that?
I figure we're going to. I figure with Luke, the fact that he is visiting these Jedi temples, he's trying to figure out the right way for the Jedi to move forward, and whether that's adopting the old ways. Maybe it's something before the Jedi Order, even though that was 1,000 generations. If by going to the first Jedi temple, he could find the original spirituality and maybe go from there. But in terms of the Sith, I don't think so, because from what I know about Sith history, it's hey, which is a weird sense that I never thought I would say.
Yeah.
But it's a sense of, oh, hey, this isn't working, so we're going to do something new. Forget that. Hey, this isn't working. We're going to do something new. Forget that. And very rarely have there been in Legends continuity now, I suppose it would be. Do you have people going, hey, let's go back to the Order of the Sith? No, let's just do two. Keep it to two. And technically, the rule of two did fail because didn't Palpatine want to create the rule of one and just be the ultimate Grandmaster and everybody would be under him?
Yeah. I mean, some of that's not canon anymore, and some of it is. It's gotten really messy. What the stuff from Darth Plagueis is canon and isn't, because some of it has gotten pulled back in by Tarkin and Lords of the Sith, and other stuff not. I mean, I feel like just going from the films, obviously the Sith collapse when Vader kills Palpatine, and obviously Snoke isn't Sith. And we know the Knights of Ren are, in theory, unless it is just Kylo Ren being like, I'm the only one who could use the Force. You guys all have swords or weapons or whatever. But I'm, if the Knights of Ren are all Force users as well, then it seems like it's, by that fact, it's a kind of a commentary on we're in a new place with Force users where the Order of the Jedi is gone and the Order of the Sith is gone. So what are sort of the new ideas, the new philosophies, which makes me interested to see, like, are they going to comment back? Like, if we learn more about how the school collapsed, or if Luke just straight up starts a whole new training program with Rey and with other students, I would love to hear in the movie sort of where's Luke about why everything has failed in the past.
Yeah.
So part of me just really wants to hear about that from a sort of philosophical standpoint.
The splintering factions.
Yeah.
And what ideologies were kept, what was expanded upon. Yeah, I think, what if Knights of Ren isn't the only post-Sith group that we see?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Great. That'd be Knights of,
Knights of whatever.
You have Knights of whatever.
But that's also Kylo, me just kind of realizing that's Kylo going, Jedi took the Knight's name, but it's so cool. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to take it back and make it an evil, mean thing. We're going to be the Knights of Ren. Yeah. Hopefully we find out what Ren is.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something, or it could just be Kylo picking a name that sounds cool. Yeah. I want a name that sounds cool.
He's a big old Nicktoons fan.
Exactly. So we talked a little bit about the balance of the Force being mentioned. Do you think that there should be a prophecy surrounding Rey? Prophecies were a big deal in the prequel movies. That's what motivated everything, the prophecy about Anakin. And then Luke was the new hope, but nobody kind of spoke of it in terms of a prophecy.
I think if it's implied, like it was in 4, 5, and 6, then, and they come out and they see like something on the wall of like a girl with a staff, or as long as it's not reminded every single second, like the prophecy, the one who would bring balance to the Force, prophecy, like as long as it's not like beating you overhead with the chosen one, get it? And then he's the bad guy, remember? So It's all with how they handle it. I think it would be against them to use a prophecy for Rey, but to have Rey to give Rey a prophecy, not to have her be the subject of one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like how we had her vision. If she is the one that is prophesizing moving forward, as opposed to them prophesizing about her, could be cool.
Yeah.
To shake up.
Yeah, so I kind of think that they won't go in the direction of a prophecy, because I think that there's still going to be some shyness about connecting too directly to things from the prequels that people criticize. I like the idea of the prophecy. I think that could have been executed better in the prequels, like when they finally figure out maybe we misinterpreted this prophecy. Like, I would have loved some more on-screen actual debate of that. I think a super cool...
12 Angry Men, 12 Angry Jedi.
12 Angry Jedi. Just a scene of that would have been great. Would have been great. And I think it would be a cool prophecy for Rey to just be, you are going to be the one who figures out what the hell does balance of the Force mean?
Yeah.
Because everybody in this galaxy has always been excited to find balance in the Force, but we never really get to hear what the various characters think that means explicitly. Certainly in various books, but not solidly a presentation from a film.
It's not said outright ever in dialogue, but everybody seems to think that balance of the Force is, oh, good guys won.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Obi-Wan says you're the one who's supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. So that was Obi-Wan's interpretation, we can infer. But
you know him in a certain point of view.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's that freshness and energy to Rey of like, well, I'm going to come in and just see things from kind of a perspective outside of all of this, because this is all just stories and legends to me, and now I'm a part of it. So it would be awesome to me if she had this really fresh perspective of like, you want me to bring balance to what? Well, then tell me what the hell balance means. That's what I'm going to figure out. I think that would be great.
But that could lead us into Force Ghosts and seeing that, getting guidance from multiple generations of Jedi.
Yeah.
And maybe we see, I don't know if there's a week that's gone by this past month where I haven't mentioned Avatar: The Last Airbender, but we could see Jedi Masters from eras that we've never seen before. We could see the original Jedi as Force Ghosts. We could see...
Interesting.
Like... the middle of the Old Republic, like when the fall of the Sith Order, like, and any of that stuff. We could see people that we've never met before, but could be a way for the studios to test. All right, well, which Force Ghost was their favorite, and which can we make a franchise out of? But also, it gives more color to the past.
Yeah,
including the prequel.
Yeah, I would be up for that. Yeah. Do you want to specifically see Anakin return? And if so, what do you want his attitude, his baggage to be like if Anakin returned as a Force Ghost?
I liked the idea of like that they had for the Anakin Force Ghost that we saw in the visual dictionary, and I thought that would have been a cool idea. But thinking about it, I would rather we have the Anakin that acknowledges, maybe we get a on-screen acknowledgement of all of his growth during the Clone Wars, because we got all of that after the fact. And maybe we get somebody who, at a drop of a hat, anytime he reaches a certain point of his memory, which is his turn, he sort of freaks out, remembers, and dissipates because he can't maintain his composure enough to maintain physical form.
Right. So Force Ghost Anakin is like a corrupt file of just like I can't access Vader stuff. It's too sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love it if he was just racked with guilt.
Oh sure.
You know, and there has been the rumor that Hayden Christensen is going to make an appearance in Episode 8. Just a rumor, and a pretty old rumor at this point. But it would be great to see a Anakin dealing with. Yeah, I did turn back to the light right at that last second, but I did a lot of horrible stuff first. Mm-hmm. Are there any characters that you would like to see come back who are not Force Ghosts? Because we've talked a lot about Force Ghosts, and they're one of the most obvious things from the prequels to come back in, because they're kind of a big dangling thing hanging out there. Force Ghosts can come back, so... I
think... this is really stupid, but this is the first thing to come into my mind. He would be really old at this point, just because of when we first made him. But I think it would be a fun little nod to put Hondo the Pirate in the background of a bar scene or something.
Yeah.
Just telling a story, waxing poetic, or just something, and you just hear Jim Cummings just a little bit. Just something in the background.
I like Hondo. I can't abide by that, because as I've told you before, on Rebels, his horn beard creeps me out.
Okay.
There's something gross about it. And I don't know if I want to see it on screen.
Think of the challenge of somebody making that a figure. That would be fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. If Hondo is in the movie for a second, that's probably the figure that they will lead with for episode 8. Get your Hondo Black Series.
Yeah, why not?
8-inch Hondo with claw beard.
But seriously, I mean, anybody that we haven't seen, I don't know. There's not too many that I think could survive.
There's a ton of death. Not only the difference in time period, but I was thinking through it of like a lot of the characters either die during the prequels or then go on to die during the original trilogy. So even beyond age, there's just a lot of death. It's very sad.
Yeah, how like life.
Yeah.
I would want the opposite. I would want, and then again we talk about this every week. I want Maz Kanata to tell where she was.
Yeah.
During that, it's like, oh, I remember when the day the Jedi fell.
Yeah.
You know, or something like that. But I think it would be shoehorning at this unless it's like a direct flashback.
Right.
I don't see how we could have anybody.
The only character, I racked my brain, and the only character, the obscure character that I thought could actually give some emotional weight or perspective is one of Padme's handmaidens.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Watto for some reason. Watto? I don't know why.
Well, Watto would be fun too. But Padme's handmaidens, in theory, they have a lot of understanding of this person who is a huge part of the Skywalker lineage as well. Mm-hmm. And in theory could be alive and much older. And I think that might be a really interesting source of information. If we ever got anything on screen of various Skywalkers trying to understand their lineage, that's one character who knows the Skywalker family, or at least a part of it well, and that's never really been tapped.
That's our way to get Betty White into the franchise. But I mean, because
she does look a lot like an old Natalie Portman, doesn't she?
They would have to be significantly older. You know?
Yeah.
So that would be cool to give an older actress some work. But yeah, I think that would be interesting, just to get a perspective of. I mean, everybody wanted to kill her. It was insane, and I never knew when my ticket was up, and clearly it's not now.
Yeah, and all those
because I'm still here.
Handmaidens dying left and right. It's very sad.
I failed you, Senator. Actually, you did your job pretty well.
Do you think that the First Order should turn to clones?
I think they should tamper with the original recipe. I think they should. I mean, then we're going into super Marvel at this point. But if they made sort of a thing where they, all right, well, let's bump up arms, let's bump up leg day, let's whatever to be like, okay, this one is more proficient in this, and they start tampering with it instead of just.
Did you say arm and leg day?
Yeah.
Okay.
So give one more upper body physical strength, give one more lower body physical strength. It's as a way to be like, well, they never tried this, and this is what could have tipped the tides.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. It's also just a really funny image to me of like these super blown out legs and just little limp noodle arms.
Yeah. Never skip arm day.
But I can't remember if you said it or somebody else on the podcast. The idea of if a ton of stormtroopers were lost on Starkiller Base, that clones might be.
It's the easiest way to regain. But I think it was something along. I'm pretty sure it was me, just because when Starkiller Base blew up, we saw Hux addressing so many people on that last day that even if a couple of people did get off the planet, and they did have extra infantries off the planet, that's a huge chunk of their army just gone. So clones would be a good way to refill those ranks instantly.
Cool. Would you want to see, speaking of prequel era in particular, would you like to see the Mandalorians being a faction?
Being a faction, yes. If it does go to the small close quarters combat like I really want it to be, then I think Mandalore could be a huge part of that.
Yeah.
For control of the galaxy.
Do you think the general story of Episode 8 will be an all-out war, or will it still be something where the Republic has survived a little bit and it's still the Resistance, this small group against the First Order, or do you think it's going to be escalated 6 months, a year in time to the point where it's just the Resistance are really desperately trying to keep the First Order from taking everything?
I think now unless they do go to clones, which I don't think they will, but I think it's going to be, now that the numbers are generally about the same and the galaxy witnesses this terrible tragedy of all of this whole system being blown to smithereens.
Yeah.
That's going to get more people interested in joining the Resistance. I think it could be just I don't know. It's a
hard decision.
It is, but I don't think it's. I think I'm going to stick with what I said before, that we're going to get a heavy politic story, but with all of the action happening beyond the scope of what everybody understands.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I was just, when I was thinking through this, I'm thinking like, oh, how could Mandalorians show up? I just got really interested in the idea of we've never seen a kind of more than just two sides war. So it would be cool if the galaxy was just a mess and there were a bunch of different factions trying to control it. And then, the Mandalorians we've learned so much about in the prequel era. So it'd be cool to see them go like, maybe we'll just take over the whole galaxy.
Maybe.
Screw you, Skywalkers.
If it comes to a planet that the Mandalorians have control of, and they're like, oh, we'll do battle here, or it happens to be a planet that the Mandalorians control, and the Resistance and the First Order end up doing battle on that planet, that brings them in instantly. Then it's like, you're on our land. It's like, no, you don't understand. We're like, no, you don't understand. You're on our land. We're going to take both of you out.
Yeah, we have backpacks and flamethrowers and knee darts. We've got it all. Knee darts.
This is one rocket. I can blow up a whole bunch of people.
A whole planet. Yeah,
don't mess with me, man.
Maybe the rockets can blow up whole planets. They have Starkiller backpacks now. Do you think when we learn about Snoke's backstory that it should be tied to the prequel era? I mean, there's all the Plagueis rumors, but even if he isn't Plagueis, there's other ways to tie it. He could have been a senator back in the day.
I think so. I would very much like for him to be like in the background, or maybe he was sitting like one booth next to them in the opera house, just like, what's all this business going on? I think it would be a cool way to bring that era in, and he could have. That means he has the wisdom of, and I can't believe I just said that. And I was like, he's not Snoke, but he's wisdom. But having the wisdom of living through these eras and knowing what isn't working, I think makes him a stronger enemy.
Yeah, I really like it. We continue. What we've already learned about the First Order is Kylo is trying to emulate Darth Vader. Hux thinks that he has figured out now how to make technology and soldiers work to actually take over the galaxy. So it would really continue that if Snoke also had the perspective of, I have been around for a long time and I have watched different people try to take over the galaxy through the use of the dark side of the Force, and now I have my shot at it, informed by all of these other attempts.
And it also utilizes the audience's knowledge. It goes, oh, well, we saw that too, so we know what you're talking about.
Right, so it makes you feel even more immersed and like you're part of it, which is awesome.
And then they don't have to spend any real extra time telling you about how he became so evil because you saw that across 6 movies.
Yeah. Which planets would you like to revisit that featured in the prequel era?
I think because we do have the tie of Captain Phasma to the Naboo cruiser. To be honest, I would like to see. I would like to see Naboo. I don't know if I would want to see Tatooine just because we already have a new desert planet.
Right.
I would like to see Coruscant. We've been reading about it a lot. Lost Stars, even Aftermath, and I'm sure in other books.
Featured prominently in Tarkin.
Oh, totally. So I think Coruscant would be an interesting way to see how even though the moving of the Senate from Coruscant to the new place, which I totally
Hosnian Prime. Yeah, and it actually moves around. It was just on Hosnian Prime there, but anyway.
You got a little extra nerdy for that one.
Yep.
But I think Coruscant and Naboo personally was what I would like to see.
Cool. Yeah. So Naboo would be great. I don't need to see Jar Jar because I think not because I hate Jar Jar so much. Obviously, there are the problems with Jar Jar that I think most people agree on. But I think any attempt to show Jar Jar would have to have some level of irony. But it would be fun to see just random Gungans.
Yeah, if you see an integrated community of Naboo and Gungans in the main capital, or actual people, because we never really saw the Naboo citizens just kind of around on Naboo until Episode 2. I just, that aesthetic is so iconic, and a lot of what makes those movies sort of step apart is that aesthetic, and I think if they utilized it in a new way, it could be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see like battered, torn up Naboo.
Yeah,
but I would love to see Coruscant. I think that would be my first pick because people became strangely attached to Coruscant. I've talked to 3 people who don't like the prequels and said, but I was kind of mystified because when Hosnian Prime blew up, I thought it was Coruscant and I was really upset. and I didn't know why. Like, well, maybe you secretly enjoy the prequels more than you thought. But more than anything, that Jedi Temple, and in Tarkin, it is revealed, and it's canon because it's Tarkin, that there is an ancient Sith temple buried underneath the Jedi Temple. So if we are getting stories of Luke going to find the first temple and Kylo and the Knights of Ren trying to collect artifacts, it seems like a really obvious thing to explore.
Especially, I figure if he dives deep into what turned dear old dad into dear old dad, it would take him to the place where he turned. And
to Mustafar?
Well, to Coruscant.
To Coruscant.
Yeah, to where he killed the younglings and that
Right.
the former Jedi Temple,
Right.
and those ruins. And then if he found that Sith Temple under that would make him question even more. Well, this temple was literally built on a lie.
Yeah.
It was literally built on darkness.
Yeah.
Could be going to that gray Jedi place that we think he could be.
For Kylo Ren as a hipster analogy, it is like him finding the most obscure vinyl record ever of like, this is the place. That would be awesome.
Totally understand it.
So there's the discussion about the poetry of Star Wars. People make fun of George Lucas for saying that, but then it's a lot of what people do appreciate that they comment back on each other. All the discussions of whether or not The Force Awakens was commenting or having too much rhyming with A New Hope. What kind of rhymes or references do you want to see in Episode 8 to both Empire and Attack of the Clones?
Well, I'm of the camp that Force Awakens didn't take from New Hope, but it took from the whole trilogy, because it ends on a down note and then kind of a happy ending. And if that series kind of ended there, everybody would be really upset. But from a story perspective, you're like, oh, cool, good things are happening now.
Yeah.
So I think it will rhyme maybe the first act. Maybe the second, but I think we really are going to start seeing a different version of the Star Wars universe, because this isn't George Lucas anymore. So I don't think I don't think they're subscribed to the same poetry.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that there will be poetry, but it will be very, very different. Like maybe this will be long form, no rhyming, whereas maybe the other was haikus.
We're going from Shakespeare to Edgar Allan Poe.
And I'm not beating up on Lucas because I like a lot of the rhyming that he did with the prequels in the original trilogy. I agree with you that Episode 8 is going to be a very, very different movie, and there's going to be very strange things that expand what Star Wars is. But I think within that, Rian Johnson released, or there was an article that was his top 10 favorite films, and almost all of them had a noir influence. And in both the prequel and the original trilogies, Empire Strikes Back and Attack the Clones are the sort of noir films where they're influenced by that style of storytelling. And in particular, I think the coolest scene to me that I think will be reflected, I'm going to go ahead and actually make a prediction, is both Luke and Anakin sort of face the potential of darkness. And Anakin, of course, just literally does it by slaughtering the Sand People. And then that's mirrored by Luke going into the cave, and it's not a real action, it's, a vision, but he falls to the darkness and he slaughters Vader and realizes the potential there. And I'm sure that we're going to have something very similar with Rey, where she has to sort of face that mirror image of herself and face the potential of being a very dark force.
If the imagery of her vision comes to pass, I mean, we're going to go to whatever that rainy planet was where the Knights of Ren were. So it could be a first test for her.
Yeah. Cool. So
and it adds to the noir visuals of a rainy city.
The rain. Yeah, there will be rain.
Yeah.
I'm also going to full on predict there will be rain.
And fedoras.
No space fedoras. Poor fedoras. They've been polluted from their original context in noir films into a different thing.
Yep.
Do you want to see the certain point of view theme that is certainly in the original trilogy, but it is really, really explicit, especially by Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin is just saying, well, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Do you want to see that played out?
I don't think it's at a point where I want it to play out, where it's definitely going to.
Yeah.
If the fact that we have 3 generations of Obi-Wan all talking to Rey, that's an indicator that we're going to get another, sitting on a stump, time to give you a certain point of view speech. I figure it's just a matter of time before we see how Rey got to Jakku and what happened with Ben, and everything is all certain point of view. And
okay, so you just think that Ben is going to show up and that is he's going to lecture her in some way.
I think it would be the coolest way as a fan, just to be like, oh, he's doing the thing that he did in the other movie. But people be more jazzed instead of incensed. I think no matter what, whether Ben directly says it or Ben Kenobi, I should say, as opposed to Ben Solo. I almost said Skywalker. Well, technically. I think no matter what, certain point of view is going to happen. That's this franchise, is certain point of view.
Yeah. I hope that even if it is not explicit, like those words aren't actually used, I hope that the film at some point makes us understand where Kylo Ren is coming from, to the point where we maybe even feel a little bad for him. And I think that would be the ultimate certain point of view, if you can get to understand where Kylo is coming from, because we all hate him, even though he has beautiful flowing locks. Few more questions, and we will move on. Do you think 3PO should have figured out by now that Darth Vader is the Maker?
I'm sure R2 has tried to tell him several times, and he's just like,
not going to listen.
You're just trying to fund me, aren't you, R2? Just no, he won't be able to accept it.
All right. Here's my final question.
That's how he got the red arm. He's like, no, and he ripped the arm out of his socket.
3PO ripped his own arm off.
Yeah.
In Fury.
Why not?
Fair enough. If there are no large or direct references to the prequels or the prequel era, which there just might not be, what tiny little thing would you just like to see in the background?
Hondo. No, aside from that, this was an interesting one to think about, but I figure maybe like a clone helmet, or maybe like we saw in Rey's walker, we saw all of the different accoutrements from that bygone era. If we go to a planet that's been untouched since the Clone Wars,
cool.
What if there's just a gang of miscreants that use old clone trooper armor as just their image?
Yeah, and that's popping up in a lot of the books. It would be really cool to see on screen, to just be a fun visual thing. I thought about this one a lot, and my pick was, since Kylo is collecting various things of Anakin's, I would like to see him find Anakin's Padawan braid.
Oh, that'd be so wizard. That would be so wizard.
Because the Jedi they collected everything. So I bet when they cut off the Padawan's braids when they became Jedi, that they had a little box. I think somewhere buried in the Jedi Temple is boxes and boxes of Padawan braids.
That's what they would use to start the pyre anytime a Jedi would pass away.
Aww.
Well, no, I figure maybe
more
that's
headcanon.
Maybe that's something that he gave to Padme, and it's in her box of stuff from her office at the Senate.
Nice.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Her box of stuff at the Senate.
It's just like, I want to give you my hair. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Annie.
I love coming up with Star Wars answers that are, to me, both a joke and true, because I think it would be really cool and also really creepy and funny at the same time.
You gotta have fun with it.
Yeah.
I mean, as fun as this universe is, it's just a movie.
It's multiple movies.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Let's have fun with it.
I know what you mean. Yeah, they should absolutely have fun with it. So that's some discussion on how much and exactly how the prequels might be reflected in Episode 8. Of course, we're all on the social media, so feel free to tell us your thoughts. But for now, shall we move on?
Let's move on. Speaking of fun in the Star Wars universe, let's go to our new favorite segment, Mind Probe. That's where you find our page on Facebook. That's Jedi Alliance. Give us a like. And every couple of weeks or so, we put out our Mind Probe. That's where you ask us questions, whether serious or fun, about the Star Wars universe, and we answer them right here on the show. So why don't we get started with Anibal Zavala Piana. What are the chances of the original score being in Rogue One, i.e. the Imperial March, etc.?
Yeah, I think the Imperial March will probably show up, but I hope it shows up in some sort of warped way. Maybe just some full-on Imperial March. But I feel like since Rogue One, the goal of Rogue One is it needs to be, this is not the Star Wars that you know. To sell people on the anthology films, that I feel like the music should be different too. Especially since we're moving away from John Williams and they need to expand the palette.
Yeah, I think they should use it in different ways. Like one of my favorite things, and it was a parody movie. I mean, I'm presenting it like nobody saw it, but Tropic Thunder was a parody movie of war movies, and it utilized some of the biggest themes that you hear in every war movie, but out of order.
Oh, cool.
Like Fortunate Son, like instead of being the one where they like everybody sort of flies in, it's just used as like it's used in a completely different part of the movie.
Okay.
So if you mix the themes around, it'll give you a feeling of, oh, this is going to happen, because you're familiar of what that music's going to do and what that music leads to, but then it goes to a completely different end.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
If they started out as, oh, this is the Imperial or just as an example, it's the Imperial theme, but it fades into, you see like the people infiltrating in the background, like slowly sneaking in, and it turns into this big espionage sort of thing that utilizes the march in a different way. So
that would be really cool.
Something fun, something to play with our expectations.
That's a great idea.
Which is what Rogue One really needs to do. Chris Marie asks, what character should host a game show in the Star Wars universe? Either because they would make a good host, or because they would be hilariously bad.
Do you want to take this one first?
I think the obvious answer is the pod racing announcer.
Oh, God.
I mean, that's
monster.
The obvious answer.
You monster. It is. It's an obvious answer.
It's Greg Proops, and he knows what he's doing.
Greg Proops is a wonderful comedian. Who did a wonderful job doing, in my opinion, a horrible thing.
It's awful.
A bad thing.
It's really bad.
It is. I defend the prequels up and down. Obviously, it's one of my least favorite parts because it's too real world. It's so much like the real world. Oh, that's gotta hurt. But the question is, to be fair, hilariously bad, and that would be hilariously bad.
That would be hilariously bad.
I'm generally a positive person. That would make me violently angry. Here's my combination once again of sort of serious but mostly a joke. I would like Dooku. Because I think all great sort of game show hosts are charming yet condescending and kind of act as though you should have known the answer and you're just an idiot because you didn't. And I think Dooku could nail that.
Like 11, though.
I know. He is like evil Alex Trebek.
What a jerk.
I also thought of this because I felt it should be somebody who can shoot Sith lightning so they can do literal lightning rounds. Making people answer questions while filling their bodies with lightning.
If they don't get it, or they have to do it while they're convulsing.
Exactly.
All right. Fair play. That was fun. Caitlin Manchester asks, I had this thought when watching episode 7. It's a little crazy, but I thought I would ask. Was it Han that turned on the lightsaber when face-to-face with Kylo Ren? This has been something that's been sort of around the community since the release.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion on it?
My opinion was it was one of my main questions after the first viewing, because I think there are some beats that set up that possibility. When Kylo is asking for help and Han says anything, I think you could interpret it as Han realizes, I'm asking for your help to kill me, and I that's the only thing that's going to put me out of this pain, and Han is willing to do that. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting, dramatic, romantic take. But I think if you really look at the actual beats of the film, there's nothing in the language of the film that communicates he's making that decision. Well, once Kylo offers it, Han puts his hand on it, and then we get just a little bit of a turn. It's not a large struggle, and then we cut to Han looking surprised. It's hard to interpret the look on his face as anything other than, what are you doing, or a dawning realization that this is what's happening. I just don't see anything in the actual film to validate the interpretation. And after I thought about it more, I don't like the idea because I feel like it's easy to interpret it as like a noble grand gesture to the son and to be to make this sacrifice for his son, but I don't think that's who Han is, and I don't think that's who Han was in this movie.
And while I agree that that's not who we know Han to be, we don't know the childhood yet. Like, we don't know if that bond was so deep and was so pure that Han would literally do anything to get back in his son's good graces.
Yeah.
And I do like how they kept it ambivalent to where they cut away after that fact, so you don't see who does what or what happens, so that we have conversations like this, and it kind of leads you to your own interpretation of what you think the character should be. And I think it's possible.
Yeah.
Especially with how Kylo Ren has been. When he gets confronted by, oh, hey, your dark side, will you do that dark side thing? And he's like, I'll do it. I'll totally do it. I don't think that he's crossed that. He hasn't crossed the Anakin line of, oh yeah, I'll kill kids. Younglings. So I don't think he was strong enough to do it.
No, I think he was really asking for help. And I feel like on Kylo's side of it, just the fact that Han put his hand on his lightsaber was in Kylo's sort of twisted mind, the validation, the acceptance, the support that he needed from his dad, or even that he just needed this sort of intimate personal moment with his father to kind of be like, no, this is okay, I can do it, which I think is amazing and complicated and dark and twisted and all of these things. But I don't subscribe to the theory that Han turned it.
Okay.
I think I've read somewhere that JJ himself or somebody else involved with the film poo-pooed it and said that wasn't the intent. My final thing on it is, if that was the intent, because I think it is a neat idea, I think it should have been executed clearly so the audience knew that, if that's the last act of Han Solo, this amazing hero, it would be nice to be like, yep, that's exactly what he did.
But I think that we'll also get more of that in the new movies.
But I think it's a great question. It's a really fun one to talk about.
Yes. And speaking of the dark side and the light, Eric Imsa asks, do you think that Darth Vader actually turned back to the light side at the end of Jedi? Saving one's son and repudiating an entire way of life are not the same by a long shot.
No. So we're ending on the really fun questions. The ones about just death and fathers and sons. I think this is great. I feel like it's kind of why I was asking the questions when we're talking prequels about how Anakin would be as a Force ghost, because it's a great button to the end of Return of the Jedi of like, I made this one positive choice, so I have come back to the light, and that is powerful. But then he's kind of got to acknowledge it doesn't just wipe everything away. So I would love to see more of Anakin, if it's not in the movie, if it is dealt with in books or comics, about if he exists in the Force and if he can communicate with Obi-Wan and Yoda, or even communicate with Luke. What are those conversations like? Or
if he has the reputation of being this Jedi killer, from a public perspective, but what if we see him as somebody who feels reverent after every life that he kills? What if it's he still does it because it has to be done and that's his master's will, but then when he gets back into his personal quarters, he does the equivalent of saying a prayer or whatever, just like requiescat in pace or something, something just to be like, I acknowledge your power. I acknowledge your life.
Yeah.
You were a good person or something.
Yeah.
If that was something where along his life he wasn't, that may neuter him or nerf him.
Well, in Lords of the Sith, unfortunately, makes it really clear that he kills, and he gets kills. It to develop more power and to focus on that hate, because that's what gives him power and focus.
But we don't know what journey he was on once he. Well, I guess we do now because of the comics. But what sort of a journey he was on after he knew that his children were alive?
Right. So we could get more from that perspective. But I do think that yes, he turned back to the light. But I think it's really complicated, and to go sort of deep on prequel stuff. It's the prequel era makes it really clear how Force Ghost works, and it's about being utterly selfless. And Obi-Wan and Yoda and Qui-Gon up to a point mastered this.
Yeah.
And either Anakin was completely selfless in that moment where he took out Palpatine and saved Luke, or else you can imagine that Obi-Wan and Yoda kind of helped him to be a Force ghost. But I think he is back to the light.
Sure.
But he's got problems.
Yeah, definitely.
He's got some guilt issues to deal with.
We never saw a conversation between Luke and Anakin. It was just, hey, I'm here, cool. But that was it. It wasn't like he could have apparated just enough to be like, hey kid, I'm all right. And then be like, they got back into the Force and be like, that took everything in me.
Yeah. So I'm really hoping to find out more about the old Force ghosts.
Yeah, that could be fun. If you want to ask us a question on the show, make sure to hit us up on Facebook. Find the Mind Probe post. Leave us a question. We post it every other week and you can be a part of the Jedi Alliance show. Thank you, everybody, and make sure to thumbs up on our page.
And now we'll move on to our final segment, Duel of the Fates. Excellent. Beautiful, powerful music plays. Last week's question was, if you were stranded on a desert island or planet with only one Star Wars movie, which movie would you choose? And I believe you chose Return of the Jedi.
I chose Return of the
Jedi. Correct? I chose Empire or the first 20 minutes of Jedi. And this was great. You guys had a ton of responses on Facebook. This is sad for me to say on our prequel episode, there were no sincere votes for The Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones. There were several jokes about this. This would motivate me to get off the island from people who don't like those films. Fair enough. But then it was very, very close between the original trilogy, and there were a couple of shout-outs for The Force Awakens. So it was very, very close. Empire and Jedi were actually tied in votes, and A New Hope just barely won. You guys had a lot of great comments, so I'm going to read 3 of them. Mike Williams said, episodes 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7 all have people leaving a desert planet at some point in the film, and rewatching those endlessly would make me utterly depressed. So it comes down to 3 and 5. 3 ends on Mustafar that would just constantly remind you of the heat of the desert. Good point. 5 begins on Hoth, so you would be somewhat comforted by not being on a frozen glacier. So for sheer mental and physical comfort, Empire Strikes Back is the winner.
But 3 was a contender there.
3 was a contender there, and I do really, really like the amount of thought that Mike gave that to figure out what would physically be the most comfortable.
Very scholarly answer.
Yeah, and Jake Higgins said, I would say The Force Awakens. Hooray! The build-up to this movie essentially made me a full-fledged Star Wars fan from merely being a casual fan, and the movie really paid off, so I would want something that makes me feel happy and at home. That's really, really cool to hear, especially since a lot of us, I think, have been involved in getting one another even more excited about Star Wars in the lead up to The Force Awakens. And then, of course, we always want to conclude somebody who commented on the winner. And the winner was A New Hope. So Rune Nilsson said, A New Hope. I still discover new stuff in it when I see it. After many viewings, there are 7 A's in many. It has the core of all things Star Wars, especially the amazing stuff with Alec Guinness, and the fact that it turned out so great despite being such a troubled production, pre-filming, and post would be a huge inspiration for me to take what I have around me, get creative, and make it work, which is a nice, inspiring perspective on being trapped on a desert island. And then, to make this comment even better, Rune included an emoji of cute young Luke and Leia drinking blue milk together. So it was just overflowing with positivity. So thank you very much for that, Rune. This week's question, Mark, is in all of Star Wars, which actor should have won an Oscar?
I gotta go the Emperor.
Yeah, all right.
I mean, if actually no, I'm gonna take that back. I would. It would be hard to. Well, no, I guess voiceover has been been on a weird journey when it comes to the Oscars. Like, there's so much emotion in the Darth Vader character.
Yeah.
But that wasn't James Earl Jones in that suit, you know?
Right.
So
you think a special Darth Vader Oscar for all of the people who contributed to Darth Vader?
Yeah, actually, that would. I mean, they're all about them honorary Oscars. This would be one where there's no category for it.
Yeah,
and Darth Vader has been such a presence in film and continues to be such a presence in film that
culture. Yeah,
definitely think it deserves it. Now you're essentially saying who's your favorite character.
No, I mean I think who by sort of, I guess there are any number of ways to interpret it, but I was thinking about it from the perspective of if genre films weren't sort of shoved off as not as important, who actually gave an Oscar-worthy, whatever that means to you, an Oscar-worthy performance, who would have been recognized if it wasn't about cutting each other's arms off in space with laser swords.
I think if we're going along Oscar politics, I think Sir Alec Guinness, because it's near the end of his career, but he puts in such an amazing performance in a film that's so outside of his wheelhouse, but it's a character that he's typed for. I think he would be the person with the most pedigree, because I don't think the Dooku character deserves it, but I definitely think that the actor does.
Yeah. Okay. So you would pick some sort of legacy.
Yeah,
Oscar.
it would be. That's really the only thing that I could see, because none of the kids really until Episode 7 really put a performance that hits Oscar voters, you know?
Yeah.
Like if we're going Oscar politics, nothing really qualifies.
Yeah,
just because
I mean, I think a lot
so
of the performances are amazing. I think Mark Hamill's performance is amazing in every film. But I think Harrison Ford should have been nominated for The Force Awakens.
I agree with that.
Supporting actor, and I think in the past, I think Frank Oz should have been nominated as a supporting actor for Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. That's a good choice.
Break the rules of.
And you would have to accept it with Yoda.
Yeah, I mean, because he did the voice, he did the body. I mean, it's supporting actor, and he was literally supporting the actor, physically supporting the actor as well.
That was a good one.
So I would go with Frank Oz. So we will throw this out tomorrow on our Facebook page. We will post Duel of the Fates, and I'm thrilled to hear you guys' choices of who should have been nominated or won an Oscar, and most importantly, I'm thrilled to hear why.
Mm-hmm. This was a fun one.
Yeah, good.
This is a fun episode, and I hope everybody out there enjoyed watching the show as much as we did recording it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any final thoughts on prequels before we wrap up?
I would say, just to the fandom in general, I've been amongst the the prequels are terrible, and that's not fun. That's not. I mean, if this is a universe that everybody enjoys, enjoy it. Find your things, pull things that you enjoy from the prequels. Am I saying that they're perfect movies? No, because they're definitely not. But find the good in things, just in general. find the good in things and enjoy them for what they are. This is the history of the Star Wars universe, and we have to accept it.
Cool. So anything you want to plug?
Nothing too huge. We just put out a new episode of the Gimmick podcast. If you are a wrestling fan, if you go to the Gimmick pod, we've been posting about it. Thanks again to Mr. Ken Napzok, because he made sure that all of that happens properly and correctly. And yeah, all of my shows on AfterBuzz are really just wrapped. But if you are a fan of video games, make sure to check out Video Game Movie Anatomy, also on the Popcorn Talk Network. We run every 2 weeks. Last week we did the Far Cry movie, which... that was an experience. That was pretty fun. So make sure to go check that out. But what about you, Joseph?
Cool. Well, you can find me on all the social media is at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can find my website is josephscrimshaw.com to find all of my shows and stuff. I also have a personal podcast called Obsessed, which is on the Feral Audio Network. In my most recent episode was with our fan favorite guest here at Jedi Alliance, Mr. Mike Black. We had a long talk about his obsession with action figures. I found out so many interesting things about Mike Black, including he has something he calls his Sigourney Weaver bathroom double feature. So if you want to find out what that means, check out my podcast Obsessed. You can find it on my website at josephscrimshaw.com. Next show coming up is I will be at Wizard World in Las Vegas doing stand-up, doing some panels. Ken Napzok will be there as well. So please come find me at Wizard World if you are in Las Vegas.
He's a wily one, that Ken Napzok.
He is everywhere. Thank you for watching and or listening to Jedi Alliance. You can visit popcorntalknetwork.com to find a nice list of all the past episodes of Jedi Alliance and links to both YouTube and iTunes. Please also follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Jedi Alliance for all the us-related news. This has been Jedi Alliance on the Popcorn Talk Network. We talk movies. Thank you for listening, because many Bothans died, possibly even in the prequel era, to bring us this information.
Producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. Views expressed here are those of the hosts only.